Welcome to the ATA Records podcast. We've just finished up another volume of our ATA Library Archive series. The Library Archive series is a place where we get to explore our love of 60s and 70s film and TV music. Whereas this music used to be, commissioned by companies like KPM, DeWolf, Bruton, we're just making it because we love and are massively inspired by the genre. We feel like there's no limitations to what we do with the music for this catalogue. One day we might see it on film or TV, I don't know. That's not really the point of it right now. In this episode, I'm having a chat with Richard Ormrod, who's long been a contributor to making music on the label. But with this library archive, I kind of feel like this is the best work that we've done together, and the longest kind of, or the most involved we've been in a project together. Richard's a phenomenal jazz musician, and he can pretty much turn his hand to most things. And one of the things that I really respect about Richard is he's dedicated to music and learning as much as he can. We definitely share a love of film and TV music, which made this project so enjoyable. The album's up for pre-order now. If you enjoy the chat, go and have a listen to it. Check it out. So when you came in, I was not on purpose listening to the library music archive that we've just finished, by the way, because I tend not to sort of like listen to them after they're kind of done, if you know what I mean.
Got to leave a bit of gap.
You were saying it gets better the more the more you forget that it's you. This is a sort of sensation that I really like. It's when I hear something and I don't realise it's me that's made it. That was
what was it? You were saying you were in cellar or something, and something came on. You'd done something that you thought you'd played atrociously on
a horrendous bass solo,
and then you enjoyed it when you listened back to it, and it made you go and listen back to it a third time, and then you realised that
horrendous.
It actually was dog shit.
Yeah. But that library archive, like that bit of time away from it, and I don't realise it. Like that's a great testament to me of something that I'm kind of like, oh, I think we've done a really good job. Because when I listen to it, my instinct isn't to kind of go, oh, that was a good attempt, or oh, maybe I could see what we were trying to do there.
Failed better.
But it was just like, oh, wow, that actually sounds like that kind of music to me.
Well, the thing that you put out and like, oh, the new one's out and it's phenomenal, which is great, because I'm like, do you know what? I'm really buzzed about this. It's brilliant.
I genuinely think it's the best one yet. I think because like one of the things about all that library music, there's kind of like this weird, is it called dichotomy, when it's like two things at the same time? Could be maybe slightly things that slightly don't really. So it's constraint but free. Do you know what I mean? It has form, but it's loose.
Yeah, well, like a lot of that good library music. It's like it doesn't. There's no. You're capturing a mood, and there's. It's not like the normal compositional problem of you've got to go somewhere or there's some kind of function. The function is the being of it. Yeah. It's like if you can just capture that flavour. So
I think that's like a real golden sort of area that's actually on paper seems really easy, or should be really easy, but is actually a really difficult thing to recreate or create as a microphone.
Excuse me, I'm just drooping slightly. There you go. That's all right.
It's a really hard thing to capture, especially how people make music these days, I think, because it's a lot more separate, isn't it, on how people did stuff.
I suppose you've got to be into doing that thing when there's a lot of pressure nowadays on making stuff that is maybe not that. So I think maybe that's from the outside. And also there isn't the space for it to be used. It used to be there was tons and tons of film produced, tons and tons of TV, and it all needed scoring. So people got to do that. That was like amazing that all those Hawkshaw and all those guys, it was like They just did it all day, every day.
It was non-stop.
It was non-stop, yeah.
I was just listening to Keith Mansfield talking about his workload.
Yeah.
And how he'd be, kind of reminds me of Steve Parry, actually. You know, like I've got 21 days to do, I don't know, 100 arrangements or something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe he wrote something like 300 tunes.
Well, it sounds like hell when you're not doing it. But when you're doing it, you just like, this is well, you're mostly knackered, I would imagine, but but you go like, you're in the flow, and you could, I mean, if there was if we were doing what we're doing now in that time, then these wouldn't be coming out once every 9 months or once a year.
Yeah,
you'd be making one every month.
I'm quite knackered, but I really feel like doing another one straight away.
Yeah.
It's because it's kind of like, another thing I always think about library music is it's kind of like this. There's just this huge amount of creative freedom. Like in the past, like, when I was doing bands and things like that, I'd always get into this kind of area where you're kind of like, oh, I've written something. And it's like, oh, well, it doesn't quite fit the back. Like, shall we do a Brazilian tune? Again, and you're just like, why are we doing a Brazilian tune as a band? Is it like it doesn't fit into...
Well, traditionally, I would just like start another band at that point. That's where it was really handy when the idea of, in finger quotes, projects came along.
Yeah.
So rather than just be like, you're in this band and then you get this tune, it doesn't really fit the band. You go like, all right, okay, I've written this... whatever it is. I mean, I wrote a thing that I really liked, that I was working with a poet, and I didn't really have any home for it. There was nowhere for it to be. And then I started playing with Pete Russell and Paul Baxter, and we were doing this trio thing. And I thought, actually, this is open enough. I can do this. And it was in the new genre that I'd come up with called Nashville Samba. So it's in three. Yeah. It's definitely got this samba thing going on, but all the harmony is like Floyd Kramer, kind of that, just major, good diatonic thing, and it doesn't sound like, the harmony doesn't sound like samba, but the rhythm doesn't sound like country music, and it was inspired by a poem about English birds.
There's a home for it somewhere.
The little ones, not like Barbara Windsor.
Yeah.
yeah, and we can do it. We do it in that band. So, but it would equally, that's a very specific. Like I said the other weekend, and I just spent all Sunday listening to iMark4.
Yeah.
And there's just you get lots of stuff that's like recognisable. Oh yeah, this is a kind of slightly soul one. Yeah. Or this is a slightly kind of a Brazilian thing or something like that. And then out of nowhere, this thing comes out, and they've obviously like knocked two things together.
Yeah.
Like someone's got a melody and it's just like not really like anything. You can like, oh, is that a bit of something? What is that?
I like when they buy an instrument as well. There was clearly a day or a week with iMark4 when the guy bought a 12-string acoustic.
Right.
Because I think there's like a whole album where it's like 12, and I fucking love 12-string acoustics. I don't know why, but it's just fucking great. It sounds almost like Italian folky or Turkish folky kind of sort of sound to it.
That was one of the things I was because I bought all these crap cheap guitars in lockdown.
Yeah.
So one of the tellies I've restrung in Nashville tuning.
Oh yeah.
So it's just like the top end of a 12-string.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, when we do another, you do some double track guitars.
I know, it's just that
because you could do stuff that you wouldn't do on a 12-string.
Yeah. You can just do whatever you want. This is the thing that always blew my head off about library music when I first started. And I don't think I don't know that much about, just about the genre, if you know it. Well, I've just listened to a lot of it.
Yeah.
From
you kind of pick up stuff as you go along.
And I think also it must have been hammered in it when we were kids, because we were saying that before as well. Like when I sent you the Stark Reality, which I don't know if you class that as library music, but I think it was made for a TV show show.
I think it's in the same world of eccentric as library music. The thing about library music is it's too eccentric to be mainstream because it doesn't jump through the right hoops.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
there's not someone at the front being cool. Everyone is like really honestly, now you'd say nerdy. Like people are just doing fun stuff without trying to put it into whatever the current box was.
Yeah.
And that's stark reality. Is like, you can see why they weren't a success, but at the same time, I'm surprised there's not a bigger cult. I looked it up on Wikipedia because I thought, who was in that band? John Abercrombie.
Yeah, John Abercrombie was.
I was like, what? Why have I never heard of that? And I've never come across Monty Stark.
And that again, another thing that just blows my head off about music in general and or library music. There's library music out there, or libraries, that were made. Like my favourite one that I only found out recently is Hockton Library, which is almost, so it was a dance studio in New York maybe that made their own records to dance to.
Oh, so right.
So they paid, and I don't know why, but library music always has this kind of very stark quality to it.
Yeah.
Like, where's I don't know, it's like, it's obviously not ubiquitous to all library music, but a lot of library music that I kind of like for some reason, the drums are dry as they come.
Yeah, well, you were talking the other day about stuff without drums.
Yeah.
And saying like, oh, there's all this stuff that just doesn't have kit on because it doesn't have a lot of percussion at all.
Yeah.
Because it's, sometimes it's valuable not to have those sounds, or it's a particular thing. And you wouldn't get that in there's very few kind of albums of like pop or stuff where the drums are really mixed, kind of dry, or it is such a unique sonic quality to that kind of seems to permeate all of library music. Yeah,
that's the other
or
thing.
Or the other way, or like massively over. It's like they try all the extremes of stuff, don't they?
Yeah,
if it works,
I guess they do.
Well, yeah, because you get those things. There's lots of bits of little things in Morricone with ridiculous reverb in an otherwise fairly sane mix
setting.
Yeah,
but all like that more. I don't know why, but my head just went straight to sort of Fistful of Dollars and things like that, because that's slightly different, isn't it? Because it's composed for the.
I suppose
the film itself.
It's quite structural,
and I'm kind of like really fascinated by the other way round, what most library music was, because it's kind of like the one that always sticks out to me is Grange Hill was called Chicken Man,
right?
Do you know what I mean? So like for especially someone in my generation, it's kind of like you would always expect Grange Hill to have existed solely as Grange Hill. It never existed. It never had a life before Grange Hill. How could the theme tune from Grange Hill be anything other than the theme tune from Grange Hill?
Exactly. Or my personal favourite, World Championship Snooker.
Which one's that?
Who's that?
What is that?
It's called Drag Racer.
And who's that by?
I think it's Mansfield.
Is it Mansfield?
I think so, yeah. Someone out there will know. It was from, the whole album was called something like High Tension Sport. That was the thing of that album. So it's like, right, this is all going to be Formula One and stuff. And it just became, you had Black and White Rag on Pop Black, and then the World Championship Snooker was that Drag Racer track. And that's kind of, so when I was doing Rediffusion All-Stars and playing that stuff live, that was the one that was like, oh, I really want to play that. Yeah. And mess around with it and just do fun things. Because that's the track that I remember from a kid, because I used to watch the snooker all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't. I was around. My dad was watching the snooker.
Like, weirdly, loads of the avant-garde stuff stuck in my head as well. Like, we don't have that now, do we? Like, you know, like growing up on that kind of...
I found it's really... What did I watch the other day? There was something... The last bit of original kind of music to a TV thing that I quite jumped out at me was a thing called the... What's it called? It's not called the White Hotel. It's called the White Lotus. Do you know this?
I've heard of that, but I don't know what it is. But
Okay,
I've heard
so it's just a weird TV thing
Yeah.
about rich people in hotels. One series is in Hawaii and one series is in Italy or something. But it's got this kind of like quite interesting soundscape with kind of like whooping kind of, you know, are they animal noises or is it that kind of like ululating,
Yeah.
you know, like polytonal
Yeah.
kind of West African thing? So it's got a bit of that ooh, 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 ooh,
Yeah, yeah.
ooh, but there's stuff in the background as well, and it all gets a little bit strange. But something I've really noticed. I watched the last few things, and they all seem to be kind of infected by kind of Westworld and, you know, that kind of like out of HBO and Netflix, and all the serials have all got this very similar
soundscape.
It all does the same thing. I think True Detective was one I first noticed it, and then a lot of stuff has sounded like True Detective. A lot of stuff sounded like Westworld, where it's kind of like quite grand and like, I mean, Game of Thrones, but that's like different because it's so pompous. I think, but it's all a bit pompous, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of well, for me anyway. It's like it's just lost all that character.
Yeah,
and
it's become very samey.
It's standardized almost. Like a lot of times the only music that I notice on film and TV is when there's an amazing music supervisor, you know. So and they generally have compiled songs from artists rather than songs from library music. Like, I can't remember the name of the series, but Aziz Ansari did one on Netflix. But the music supervisor was incredible. Whoever that was, like the tunes that they were picking were just amazing.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, Fargo, when Fargo came on and they started doing that thing. I don't know. Did they do it in? They didn't do it in The Wire. When they started doing that thing of having just a really great track at the end of the episode. Yeah. So rather than have the theme tune, they would just have like a really off the wall, something really nice. So there's like, what did I come across through that? Oh, a Japanese band. Yeah. That was like, I can't remember the name of it. It's in my phone, but I'm not gonna find it. That's got a bit of that kind of Kodo drumming in, but also it's like a bit of a soul thing. Yes. You know, and you're like, oh yeah, that's great. You know, we didn't need to hear the theme tune again. Yeah, that's really great.
I read something recently, and I quite.
You kind of look forward to it.
Yeah, I quite like this. That the intro to Better Call Saul. Now I think this guy lives in London, called Little Barry. His name is. Now I don't really know anything about him, but he's the guy that wrote Better Call Saul, and Better Call Saul has now that intro has now become the most like annoying guitar shop thing for people to play. It's overtaken Stairway to Heaven
and Smoke on the Water.
Yeah, wow. Which I thought was like that's a really good one. Hear that someone's managed, you know, to do that. But we haven't talked much about our library archive. We've just gone off and talked about other library and.
But isn't that how it all functions? Is it's all just kind of like you go down a wormhole, and then out of that you go, something bubbles up, and that's what all those tracks have come about through mainly you and Yost going down wormholes. And kind of or something coming back out of a wormhole that you'd forgotten about, that a wormhole you went down last year, and then you've ended up in the studio and a bass line's come to you.
I was like, it's interesting doing those bass lines or doing those sort of the templates for each track, so to speak, because I was thinking about that as I was driving over today, and it's kind of like Yost and I are making canvases, if you know what I mean. It's like we're making these sort of canvases. I kind of think as a bass player, it's like library music's really good, and almost like quite a basic composer, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like I can see the geography of the land very easily from where I sit, because I guess there's some tracks that I'd like to break more into where some of that IMAT4 stuff where the bass is like just doing more interactive kind of stuff as a kind of frontline instrument in a way.
Yeah.
In times. But with a lot of this library music stuff, I can just find an idea relatively quickly. It doesn't take much thought, if you know what I mean, and kind of definite ending. Make sure it has a definite ending.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's like just every time you just take the thing that comes up, it all comes from that thing. So, something that you said a few times when we've been recording stuff, and you've said about the number of times you've had people in here, and they'll be playing, and they're searching for stuff, but they're not listening to what they're actually playing, and they'll play like 5 or 6 amazing things, but discard them because they're looking for something specific and they haven't seen it. Whereas if you just respect the first idea, and then turn that into a thing, and I mean, if those guys, if Mansfield and that, if they're recording the amount of stuff they were doing, like you said, like 300 charts a year or whatever, you like every idea goes down on paper.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you don't finish the chart this year, then it's going to be used next year.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to find a place somewhere. And you're probably the same, but I've just got like stacks and stacks of sort of... It's so interesting that you can... it's almost, again, back to that thing, it's almost limitless. How much can I do with G minor? For some reason, I really gravitate towards G minor on a bass. It's like I really enjoy that key for some reason. And it's kind of like, how many of these kind of permutations of 5 notes, can I come up with and not kind of think to myself, oh, you've done that one before though, haven't you? And I never kind of feel like that. I'm always kind of like, oh, this is a new beast or a new...
Yeah, but you don't carry around all the stuff. I mean, going back to that thing of, it sounds better the further away I am from... To me, it sounds better the further I am. Because, you can always kind of remember how you felt when you played it and stuff, and you're human and all that stuff. Every time you hear it, bits of that go in. If anything, I'm kind of more worried about how I'm going to feel about this in a month or so, because that album sounds so good now.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of me going, well, surely I'm going to react again. Surely I'm going to feel a bit shit about this some point. I can't just be happy. I can't just be happy
about something.
I can't just be happy with my own performance. That would be a nightmare. But either way, you can't, either you going back over interviews with people like, like jazz people, Mingus and Miles Davis and all that, they didn't listen to their old records.
No. They didn't even listen to the records when they were finished. They weren't even allowed in the control room.
No, I'm sure they weren't. But, they've just moved on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And, we're not in that rarefied company. So at least the best thing it feels to me that I can do is often do it and then just not listen to it for a bit, because let's just not put that in my head. Just not worry about whether I liked what I did or not. But I wanted to play this to people when you sent the rough mixes over. So there was a couple of people around at the weekend who was like, right, oh, you've got to hear this. And quite worryingly, I'm still listening to it.
What do you have any favourites?
Yeah, lots of favourites. Weirdly, some of the ones that I'm not on I really like. So Pineapple Diode Daiquiri, which is mostly Bob.
Yeah.
That thing, it's got a real, I don't know, there's something about it. It's like weird. It's almost like music from an early 80s kind of car game.
Well, Bob's really
like something I can remember from an arcade.
Games,
something I can remember from an arcade when I was a kid or something. Like one of those things with like heavily pixelated palm trees.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Possibly one of those arcade games that you got inside, like it was an actual a car.
I'd love for these things to go out into the world and become that. Like at the moment, like obviously I don't know if you saw the email this morning, the subscriber email that I sent out, but I haven't got the record back yet from the pressing plant,
Right.
but they sent me some product photos of the record sleeve.
Oh, yeah.
So we're doing bundles, you can buy all 3 volumes, and you see all 3 volumes kind of together. It's just like, oh, fuck, that looks great.
Yeah.
That looks really good.
Yeah,
and
but
it's
wait,
kind of like,
wait till there's 12.
I know exactly. Wait until there's 12.
The archive.
Yeah, and then it's just like, if there's 12, that's like possibly 144 tracks.
Yeah.
That's a real serious body of work, in it.
Yeah.
Of film music to make TV sound good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but even at the time, even back in the 60s and 70s, and this isn't all the time, but maybe half the time, the music was the best bit about some of those programs.
I know.
Oh, it made them. It really made them, I mean,
what would
even
Charlie Brown be out without Vincent Guaraldi?
Yeah, for sure.
They'd probably find another Vincent Guaraldi but I don't know, would they? Or it's hard to take those things apart once they're put together, isn't it? Like Grange Hill and that Grange Hill, like Chicken Man.
Yeah.
Like it completely, for some reason, personifies.
Yeah, all those
the show.
I mean, for me especially, and particularly because I'm not really into sport, but all that 70s and 80s sports music.
Yeah.
And all of it is in my head, and I never watched any of it.
Yeah.
I've never had slightest interest in football or any of that stuff, but everything from grandstand to World Athletics, bloody Wimbledon. Why is the Wimbledon music in my head? Because it's great music, and you just heard it, music. And you knew, you were going to hear it you're going to hear it over 14 days once a year, but somehow it's just in your head.
I think, going back to what you'd said earlier, about how frequently these people were doing it. It's like, maybe that is the trick, is to just never stop doing it. Because back to that thing about, like, it's such a training ground as a composer, I feel, as well. You know what I mean?
I think you get into good habits. It's like especially you, because you're mixing it. It's like the more you're doing, you're just learning when to stop.
Yes.
And to an extent, the pressure of recording it, even though we don't have their pressures, we've got our own pressures.
Yeah,
you've got your, as a small label, you've definitely got, it's like, right, this needs to end in the next couple of days, because, we've got slots in pressing plants to make and all that kind of thing. And I think maybe a lot of that is just kind of like working fairly cleanly.
Yeah.
So having an idea, quickly putting it into some kind of like, right, this is going to be the sound of this line. It's going to be on bass clarinet, or it's not going to be on this, or it's going to be like that. We're not going to, let's do the number of times where we kind of went, okay, let's not do that. That's going to be too much. Let's not even do it. Because at first you kind of go, oh, well, let's record it, and you can always drop it out of the mix. And then later on you kind of go, hey, do you know what? Let's just not do that. Let's do this instead, which is going to be better. And
it's like there wasn't a lot of stuff, to use the phrase, on the cutting room floor. That's what I really enjoy about this stuff as well. Like we've all, like, when we've been given, like business advice stuff, it's like, give away like a load of free unreleased stuff. It's like, we release everything. It's
all out there.
It's all out there. We don't. There's no cutting room floor stuff.
I mean, it's very. It feels different to some of the other ATA projects because there isn't really a brief to hit.
No,
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because the other bands, they are their thing.
Yes.
So if it's a Sorcerers thing, it's a Sorcerers thing, and it sounds like the Sorcerers. If it's the Lewis Express, it's got a sound. It's got to be that thing. But the Library Archive could cover like 40 years of vibe.
Yeah.
It could be anything from early 50s to kind of mid 80s.
Yeah.
And there's no real reason why it shouldn't all be. I mean, I know you've got there's bits that you absolutely love and periods that you're really into, but sometimes stuff just comes out and it's just got a different thing,
That's it. There's feels like total freedom. And the other thing that you're saying there, that's it. I don't know how many people, like, I don't know if people join these dots, because I've specifically tried to keep the library archive as a kind of faceless well, a lot of the projects are kind of faceless in a way, but like the library archive, specifically by not putting like names of musicians on the covers and things like that, to kind of reflect what that library time was. But most people won't realise that it is essentially the Sorcerers. That's what's quite amazing about that. I think in our minds we compartmentalise it.
Well, I think not even that it's like it's most of the tracks are 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
You know, but then out of a pool of maybe 5 or 6 people.
Yeah.
You know, there's you and Yost, me, Chris
and
Bob.
Danny and Bob. So there's like 6 on it.
Yeah.
But
and there we go. You were talking about playing some of that stuff live.
Yeah.
There's your band.
I'd love to
That's a
play
6-piece band.
But as we were talking, you were mentioning like all the sports theme tune stuff. I was just kind of like, oh, I'd love to do the Yorkshire Film and Television Orchestra, because the catalogue's almost big enough now to kind of just take the library archive catalogue and have it performed by the like 20-piece big bands.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I particularly, like, I was thinking, I don't often have favourites in a way.
Oh, the tracks.
Yeah, they kind of pop up, and I'm just really excited to hear each one.
But isn't that the thing about all that stuff? Is that it's that each one is a bit of ambience and a mood, and some of them have got kind of like real melodies.
Yeah.
Some of them haven't got real melodies, but it's just like the whole thing is, you know, there's a few of them in it, and we've put nice stuff over like a couple of weeks on top. There's nice bits of keyboards and nice bits of this, but really it's like the whole track is about the drums.
Yes.
You know? so you, sometimes you can just quite happily just listen to 3.5 minutes of Yost.
Yeah, just
like,
being great.
Yeah, isn't that nice, you know?
But I was going to say one of the things I really enjoyed that we've managed to achieve that I didn't feel was, well, it's been achieved more by having you on board, is your ability to kind of like take a melody and then improvise around it, but keep a very steady anchor. Like, and the best one, or one of the ones for that for me, is Street is Family.
Oh yeah, the flute thing.
You know, where I was kind of like, well, this little basic bass player melody, you know, composed melody, and then just this kind of thing afterwards.
Yeah. And
you just did this incredible take, and I don't even know if it was like first or second. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't. That's what I love about having you involved in doing these things. You interpret that incredibly well.
I think I'm the right man for some of those jobs because I got a lot of reference points, you know, because I used to watch a lot of TV as a kid, and a lot of films, and a lot of old films, and a lot of foreign films, even when I was a kid, because they were just on in the house. And just like that, The Street is Family, when we put it on, and immediately I kind of went, oh, hang on, there's a kind of little bit of a Sesame Street thing there, you know, that we kind of like both often relate to, and we go like, oh yeah, it's got that kind of bounce and kind of positive thing, but it's a darker track, it's a kind of heavier track, and that's one of the reasons, that's where the kind of the name came from, you know. Actually, I think it's worth mentioning that a lot of the time when you do the rhythms with Yost, the tracks are just tracks. They've got a sonic identity, but you don't give anything names. And I get really uptight about things.
Yeah, no, you do.
Names.
It's because
and I really like it to have a name, and then I can put a face to it.
It's great how I see it as a very different way around it. I'm a bit more. I really relate to the idea of a sculptor.
Right.
It's kind of like, when I do that first track, of course there's possibilities, but it's kind of all, I'm not going to say it's all there in my brain, if you know what I mean, but the possibilities are all kind of there in my brain, and I feel like I can just chip away at this thing,
right?
You know, and I do really think that's it's really interesting, you know, being a bass player and seeing how differently people think about or view music in a way. You know, like as a bass player, I always see I'm always looking from the bottom up. It's almost like I'm an observer, if you know what I mean. I've spent a lot of my time just sitting there, not sitting, like supporting and observing what people are doing. So when I'm doing these things with Yost in a way, it's almost like all that stuff is kind of happening. You know, it's kind of like there's in the periphery of my brain, but that doesn't always turn out to be the actual piece in the end. You know, but I like what you're saying, because like you have this more visual thing where you're like, the minute you put a title to or a name to that thing, it's like your personality comes through to you more. Well,
it could be you know, like trying to, that thing that you were saying about being able to play the melody and then play around that melody in a way that's appropriate for the track, or that makes the whole track, helps to make the track cohere.
Yes,
that's the thing that you like, right? So for me, that's all about having some sense of what like what the track is. Like they could all have, because some of them haven't got melodies and there's just improvising.
Yes,
but again, it's like finding the vibe or the thing for it, and sometimes it's a bit, you know, like the worst thing would be if you said, okay, can you do some funky stuff on this one?
I know you hate that, don't you?
Yeah. Like,
it's almost like your kryptonite, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you know, that's kind of historical from all the, you know, from the living in Leeds in the 90s and
exactly
drowning in funk.
And my thing with that is always, and I try to put this across, but it's like, let the track be funky and you can just be you. You know, because I think
that's why it's nice to get an idea.
Yes.
And so a lot of those things, because there are a couple that are actually like properly sat down and thought about it. So I can't remember what it ended up being called. Is it called the Infernal Clock or the
Infernal Clock?
Yeah, the one that's gong 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 gong.
Yeah, you went away and composed.
It's like a little
really
canon.
Nice, yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And then in the end, we kind of like deconstructed it and we're like, oh, we need that line and that line, and just finding the ones that so it didn't end up being quite a canon, but that's no big deal. You know, all those structural ideas are just ways of getting things moving,
getting from A to B.
Well, that's what, you know, back in the day before composers had 4 tracks to put ideas down on, they needed structures to work around. Everyone had to have these structures, so all those little templates were just, they're just like structures. Yeah,
and like your involvement in this one, more than the others, like has really complemented areas that I don't work and I don't think. You know what I mean? Like, you know,
well, I like melody. I don't mean like the top line, but that's through predominantly my life. I've played those kind of instruments, you know.
Yeah.
So that kind of like saxes
I know
and flutes.
Like, I don't know if I ever told you, but like, so as a bass player, I hear plenty of melody, and what's quite good is I don't have the weight of all these giants on my shoulders that bothers
trust me. I don't have it. I don't.
But like a lot of things that I'll compose melodically, I think a lot of people would kind of do and then just go, I can't do that. That's way too basic or prescriptive or something like that in some respects. And I often feel, as the sort of type of musician that I am, that it kind of gives me the freedom to do that. Like I don't question it. I don't go, oh, well, that's quite basic. I kind of like it. The more kind of basic or.
This is why I always tell people that I'm not a bass player and not a drummer, because I feel it gives me a free pass to do what I want.
And that's why I love your piano playing.
Right.
Because you'll often like, you're the one person that really gets those kind of dong dong dong,
right,
like piano parts, you know, that I want, and will actually play them way better than most piano players, you know.
Couldn't possibly comment.
Well, I can, you know, right. And it's like, you know, you get the emotion behind it, or you get the intensity behind it, and there's, you know, something that.
I suppose I don't have anything to prove on the piano.
That's a great thing. It's a great place to be, isn't it?
I don't have anything to prove on the, you know. But and in a way, I suppose that's why I really just enjoy. I mean, the thing. Something that was weird during lockdown was how my relationship changed to certain instruments, and it might have been it's fiddle and bass, but the things that were our bread and butter instruments, the things that we lived by.
Yeah.
It was kind of odd because I'd almost developed what had been a very kind of like, my tenor saxophone that would come to bed with me and all that kind of thing had kind of become my job to an extent, and not having to play it, I kind of almost didn't want to play it.
I know. I kind of I really prefer. I don't know if "prefer" is the wrong word,
because it wasn't fun, and it wasn't work.
Yeah.
And the reason it wasn't fun was because maybe I'd lost a bit of the fun in all the work. But what it did mean was that I spent 2 years becoming a better terrible guitarist, a better terrible piano player, and a better terrible drummer, a better terrible bass player.
I think as I say, I love all the tracks on. I love them all equally. I don't have a favorite child, but the Satan Stalks Among Us was that's a real high point for me. That just being able to create something like that. That's both heavy beats and groove, but massively sort of avant-garde at the same time.
Sometimes we make these tracks, and you can kind of imagine the film.
Yeah.
In fact, quite a lot, especially when we're talking about it being, this could be, what bit of a film would this be, or that kind of thing, and kind of that would be like, I don't know, that Satan Stalks Among Us, maybe like a John Carpenter horror film, but set in Harlem. Yeah. Like a kind of blaxploitation, like Blackula. Yeah. Directed by John Carpenter.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. It's a good little.
It's almost like a possession scene, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah. The Exorcist. No, it's too wacky.
Not that kind of possession scene. But
like having your car repossessed.
No, I can just see set through the eyes of somebody who's kind of going through something mildly demonic.
Yeah.
Possibly at night.
Yeah. There's good bits of piano on there as well.
So there you go.
Is that Johnny?
No, it's you.
No, you'd already had some piano on there. Don't you remember?
No,
and then I replaced
that's you. That is actually.
Is that another track?
It's another track, yeah. That's
one track where I placed the left hand. Dong, gong, gong.
That's it. That's the one. That was kind of like...
that's not the Countdown to Catastrophe.
It's not Fear on Phobos.
No.
And that was a tune that I didn't think was going to make it.
It's quirky. It's kind of very quirky. It's quirky. And
I really had to rearrange it in the mix,
right?
Which was something I'd never done before on tape.
Yeah,
it's just kind of like there was something about it that was, I don't know. It was actually the first one that we did recorded
right
beyond the drum and bass session, and it was kind of like I think I got a bit too excited about desk overdrive on guitar and spring reverb, so it just had a lot of horrible frequencies in it.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of had to
Strip
Bob came in and did the melody as well and did some chords, so I had to flip it all on its head from being a guitar based thing to actually being an organ based thing. Yeah, but I was very pleased that I managed to, because it's
right. Oh well, I never heard, because I never heard it
Punk Ventures
pre. Yeah, I mean, I really related it to the old kind of Adam West, Burt Ward, Batman, because it's got that kind of thing to it. But then you were talking about, like Jerry Anderson and space stuff.
Yeah,
and it's got all that. There's all those kind of colours in. I think we spent best part of an hour trying to come up with a title for that.
That was one of the tricky ones, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was Moon Monkeys.
I still stand by it. Moon Monkeys, man. Moon Monkeys are going to arrive one day.
At some point, yeah.
To be honest, I think they walk among us.
It's not lizards that you're into, it's
No.
moon monkeys.
No. Well, the good news is it's not lizards. The bad news, well, it's not really bad news. The moon monkeys. It's it's not an invasion. It's just a large practical joke.
Well, I think we did a very good job. It's funny, like I don't think I've ever heard myself say that before, like out loud, actually on tape,
Yeah.
so to speak.
I'm going to be happily listening to that. It's put it like this. So, I'm following ATA on Spotify.
Yes.
So it's because it's easy
Yeah.
to just pull the track out
Yeah.
on Spotify, So I've got a little Spotify playlist, and I've also got like very specific. So I've got like a KPM playlist,
Yes.
which is just all the KPMs. I've
Yeah.
got an iMark 4 playlist, and because I'm very thorough, they're all kind of labelled all under library. So I've got like
Yeah.
library KPM, library iMark, library ATA. Despite the fact that not all ATA stuff is library music, I feel like that's his natural home. That's why I want to find it when I'm scrolling through stuff. But this album has also gone into a general library playlist alongside a couple of my favourite KPA.
Nice.
So it's made the cut
That's great.
because I wanted to hear it in context and
Yeah.
notice it and see if, I mean, obviously some things are going to stand out, and obviously sometimes, like you said, you hear something you've played and gone, oh shit, that's me. But I just thought generally, it's
Yeah.
like, do I like it as much? It's like going to opticians. Is it better with or without?
Oh man, that's really cool.
So I just thought I'd put it in there, and I mean, it's going to be. I would imagine it'd be radically different for people listening to it who weren't involved in making it.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the same psychological issues that we do.
No.
But yeah, I thought, wow, that's like, and I got to thank you because it's been the first time in a few years where I've been involved in a whole album of stuff that I felt I could walk away from without, at the end of it, I went home and had a beer. I didn't go and drink for a week.
Yeah.
And I think it had a really positive impact on recording
Music.
the next thing, on the Sorceress thing.
Well, that's brilliant as well.
Because we were just ready to go.
We were. And
Although that was a deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. But that's another
podcast.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
That's another analog podcast.
It is. Well, thank you for everything that you've done, Richard.
You've
been an exemplary contributor.
Brilliant. Great. Can we put the album on again?
Yeah, let's go and listen to it. It's only 28 minutes long, isn't it? So, or is it? No, it's 23 minutes long. Proper library. That's the other thing I'm so proud of. 12 songs, 23 minutes long. In and out.
Nice one.
Listen to it twice.
Yeah. More, please.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that episode. The Library Archive Volume 3 is up for pre-order now. Head over to our website, atarecords.co.uk, or our Bandcamp, just ATA Records at Bandcamp, and you can pre-order yourself your own copy. Thanks for listening.